Hello and welcome back to SiGMA TV. In this discussion, we'll be taking a look at the growing world of esports and virtual sports. And joining me in this discussion, we have Martin Wachter, CEO of Golden Race, providing innovative, tailored solutions and virtual sports worldwide. We also have Sebastian, Läger, founder of TwogNation, an esports holding company providing single entry to esports. So gentlemen, first of all, it's so great to have you both on the line today. Thank you for your time. And maybe Sebastian, I'd like to start with you just because for people that maybe can't identify the difference yet between virtual sports and esports, let's just start with one sentence. How would you describe the difference?
Okay, that's a tough question right at the beginning. I mean, technically, from my point of view, it has nothing to do with each other in the sense of the esports definition. There's gaming. There's competitive gaming, and whenever there's an economy and a franchise or more, like a community built around a competitive title, then we call it esports. That's pretty much the three definitions you need to know if you go into MySpace. However, due to Corona, there is also other outlets where traditional sports found new ways and simulating sports into the virtual sphere. While it's not esports, but it's yet another outlet that sports has found. I think that's where I would draw the line. It has really nothing to do with each other, but it's fulfilling a similar need from that industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that clarity before we jump in and carry on the discussion there. So Martin, I'd like to turn our attention to you now because I actually saw a tweet that you spoke out this week stating that virtual sports have not just been a quick solution for helping the betting industry during the pandemic, but also a really powerful resource to complete bookmakers and also operators. So how have recent months changed how consumers, operators, and even bookmakers, how they view virtual sports?
You know, I'm in this industry since almost 20 years, and I started my own virtual company in 2006, so now year 15, and virtual sports was always very heavy when it goes to sports betting. And I still believe when it goes for classic sports betting in retail or online, it's the best fit next to real sports betting, because actually how we do virtual sports is that we do it exactly like real sports. We have realistic odds. The outcomes are close to real outcomes. We use events which are very popular. There is no influence from the players or from our side on the outcomes. It's then pure on RNG. So it was always very heavy. So this was actually the funny part when I hear the last few months, virtual sports, esports and poker, the best solution in pandemic. It was always very big. So for us it was nice. The pandemic had the positive effect that we got more clients in online, the negative one that we lost some business in retail for a short time. But okay, it gives a little bit more interest again, especially for big companies who thought that it's not a need to have virtual sports or maybe even esports. So yeah, very good situation at the moment.
A busy year, and someone that, as you mentioned, you've been in the space for 20 years. This year has certainly accelerated development. And Sebastian, you also have been in the esports space for a very long time. I would almost consider calling you a veteran in the esports industry. So esports has changed so much since the late 90s, of course, but how has the esports space developed this year?
Well, I mean, we're still on track. We have a year-over-year growth that's just really amazing. That's also one of the reasons I threw all my other careers overboard and committed full-time to esports. What Corona did to us is pretty much accelerate what was already accelerated. So because most of the, for example, betting industry, they already had esports, but now all of a sudden during Corona, that volume of what they had to take in was much larger because just sports went away. So while we have been sort of the prodigal child on a normal operation day without Corona, now all of a sudden we became a main player, and a lot of people invested into esports. A lot of capital is getting shifted towards, and also since Corona is unknown in terms of time planning, nobody knows when is Corona over, when are restrictions lifting. Nobody knows if there's maybe right away a second pandemic coming, right? I mean, it just takes one new virus on top of Corona and the seasonal flu, and you're going to see another lockdown. So esports becomes a bit of a safe haven, as you call it, from the financial industry. It's definitely a bet you should take if you want to stand on more than one leg, pretty much.
Definitely a bet you should take. I like the phrase a lot. So now, Martin, so you're expecting the popularity of virtual sports to grow over the next few years. I'd love for you to identify maybe some of the factors that really make you think that virtual sports industry is poised to grow, and will it replace other areas, do you think?
No, it will not replace other areas. I wouldn't know which area it can replace. Virtual sports from day one. As I remember in 2003, 2004, when I started to sell virtual sports, mainly in retail, it was always a game to have in a betting shop next to real sports. Why? When you had bad months, high payouts on real sports, you were always on the safe side that you have at least the income from virtual sports, where you can pay the salaries, the rent of your office, and other fixed costs, what you have even if you have high payouts. Whereas I don't think we have to replace something. We have so many markets in esports or virtual sports which are still virgin. I speak about US. We have maybe 2-3 states where you can actually work on a regulated virtual sports. The rest of North America, a lot of European countries which are opening more and more. If you see, for example, Italy, 25% of a good sports book is done on virtual sports. If you see Africa, only in Africa, Golden Race did €500 million on GGR in 2019, which is a huge amount. I don't know too many sports betting companies are doing this amount. So saying that, there is also Scandinavia, other European markets about to open. We don't have to replace something. We just have to focus on the new regulated market, and it will be a huge, huge growing in the next years, 100%.
And just to follow on from that, Martin, because I had a look at some of the figures that have come out from Golden Race and their presence in Africa, for example, and I think it was around 85%. It was extraordinary. So what do you think make up some of the components for making it so successful in a region?
Why Golden Race is successful in such a region, it's an easy thing, because for us, it was very important, first of all, to have realistic ways of bets. And I think we're still the unique virtual company which is working on real odds. So players, after a while, understand it's not a graphic, which makes the game. Then I play PlayStation. It's more the game, how it works, the possibilities to win. Because in the end of the day, the only thing what counts is my experience on the game and not the graphics. The other thing is that we always focus to get a low budget retail solution, which is easy to install, also to install when there is a very bad internet. And this makes us so big in Africa. I would say that at least between 8-9 tickets out of 10 in virtual sports are sold by us, especially in the big markets like Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana. So yeah, we focus more on the technology and the player behavior, that they like the game, than to have the most outstanding graphics. We were never been called the most outstanding graphics, but we have, I think, the most popular game when it goes in the shops.
Fantastic. And now, Sebastian, turn to you, because on the topic of acquisition of new players and really onboarding, I want to get your intake on what are some of the ways that esports in the industry, it can actually attract non-esport fans to join this new community.
Well, it works a bit like drugs. There's mostly an entry drug. Just like with betting, right? You start slow, you just, I don't know, one day you bought a lottery ticket and maybe you won your $250, and then you say like, okay, actually I do this every day. So something always gives you an entry. The good thing with esports is that our entry drug is sort of not criminalized, right? If I have to go to a kiosk or a little shop, buy a lottery ticket, that is already with the stigma attached right there. Or if I go into a casino, right? There's a reason casinos are black folded and you can't even look inside it. There's a lot of regulations. With gaming, it pretty much starts with browser games. Like you can go to your Facebook right now on a messenger and you can invite some to a casual game. And even there, the competitive part starts because you can rank yourself against other people. And that is pretty much the entry drug. And it knows no age limits, right? There's a lot of games that range down to the age of 3, 4, when kids can be able to hold a device or sit somewhere. Gaming is now getting woven into education and many other aspects of life. And if you look into the general gaming term, how many people are actually gamers, we're talking about more than 50% of the people on the planet. And that is almost fully agnostic on the region. We're not talking about a first world issue here. We're talking about pretty much anyone who has a smartphone is more or less likely a gamer. For example, my mother doesn't even know what I'm really doing, even though I explained her 50 times. But even she is a player. It's like she plays everything from solitaire to other little smartphone games. So technically, she is a gamer. And in theory, if I would really try hard, I could even also bring her in that region. So the bottom line for me is everybody likes to play. When we're younger, maybe a bit more than we're later, but effectively, we never stop to lose our inner child. And that is always the gateway drug to do more. Some people are born with a competitive element in their character, some are not. And you can choose your poison pretty much as you move forward. So we don't have to do anything. I don't have to do an educational campaign. I don't have to market very much. The people are already doing this, and we just build on top of it.
Fantastic. And Martin, is it a similar answer for you when it comes to onboarding new consumers into the world of virtual sports?
First of all, I have to agree with Sebastian. Even to be the market leader in virtual sports after so many years in collecting awards, I still don't believe that my mother understands what I do. So I'm not sure she thinks I'm in drugs or something else, but she doesn't understand very well what it means, what I do with virtual sports. To attract players, I think it's one main point for all the operators and a big discussion what we have, and I think it's the same for Sebastian. It's all about positioning our games. If they put our virtual sports next to a casino environment where you have people only playing a slot machine, don't want to think too much, just choose an amount and the set of how many spins they want to do, and then you put virtual sports or esports where he has to think a little bit. He has to understand who is the favorite, what are the odds and how to play. It might not work. You have to place it next to the sports book because it's very close to the sports book. You have to, when you work, for example, in different markets, you have to be sure that you offer the most famous sports, like, for example, in Europe and Africa, for sure it's soccer. So we're doing 90% of our tickets in virtual soccer. And if you are able to do your virtual soccer in a good way, it works out. For example, in Italy, our Serie A is doing more tickets a day than the real Serie A for my operator. And we speak about a volume of 6% of the whole sports betting volume in Italy. So players find it. And you have to attract the players that they start to trust in it. They can play their favorite team, but in a better frequency because you have every 5 minutes an event. And this is how it's going to work. So, but we can do the best games if our partners or operators doesn't help us to give us the right position. It's very difficult to grow and get more players, especially in digital.
Certainly, absolutely. And now for the final question for both of you, and Sebastian, I'll start with you because I have to reference your annual esports predictions of 2020 video. So you released an annual video with your predictions for the next year. And I think what was interesting about this year is I don't think anyone could have predicted the 2020 that we've all seen. But there was some accurate mentions that you did have, and one was mentioning, for example, economic issues, but also social issues like racism actually impacting esports. So I want to get your insights on kind of how close to the mark you were with your 2020 predictions, and if you have any for 2021.
Well, 2021 is a bit too early. I'm not going to do that before, let's say, Q3, Q4. Otherwise, I'm going to be too far off. Yes, when I made this video, it was pretty much the time when China still didn't even release that there was a new virus found in China. So my predictions was entirely ignoring the pandemic. However, I would say about 60% of what I said is fairly independent from the pandemic and its effects. However, there's a few things that I mentioned that might be exacerbated or accelerated by Corona. So I mentioned, for example, a recession. I mean, I'm deep into politics. I try to keep it away from normal platforms like LinkedIn, etc. But if you follow me on Twitter, it's as political as can be. It's the only outlet where I allow myself to bring that out outside of private space. So when it comes to a recession, I predicted that for latest 2021. That's just based on my economical opinion. I do believe the system we are running right now and the circular crisis management we have, being, for example, 2008, one of the latest crises, nothing has been repaired, so it's bound to recur. Now with Corona, the thing is everything I said, for example, about a recession, which will impact everyone's industry pretty much because consumer behavior will go down in terms of spending, that will probably be delayed. simply due to the fact that right now most of the central banks in the world are printing money like it's candy. That means it's a bit like a soldier on the battlefield. Everybody of them have such an adrenaline injection. So even if you're shot, you inject yourself with this and you can fight for another half an hour before you eventually drop dead. That's the same effect we have right now in the economy. So as long as they keep printing money and they have these repair and post-corona programs, we are fine. My only fear is that the fall we're going to have is much deeper than it would have been with an organic recession in 2021, for which we could have all prepared ourselves. Now the stakes get higher and higher. It's a bit like poker, right? Like the pile just grows and grows and nobody knows when it ends. That's a bit of my fear. And while we're now, let's say, immune against the corona effects in terms of what people do, when people are at home, they play games. If people are unemployed, they still play games. If people have hardly something to eat, they still play games. So that's very much in our favor. But the second they really stop spending time and subscription and in-game items and all that, that will then trickle down the food chain and it will hit esports hard as well. So our crisis, our pandemic in esports might come a year after corona might be solved. And that's the biggest thing I'm fearing right now. And you can see the first precursors now already all over the world. If you look at the US, we're looking at almost a third of the population, or renters actually, not population, facing evictions and many other issues, foreclosures, the unemployed rates. And no matter what Mr. Donald Trump says on his Twitter feed, the numbers are still there. And we have to face that. And that goes for betting, for sports, for pretty much anything that consumes. So that's the part with recession. And everything else is pretty much still true. Of course, brick and mortar, what I mentioned, that esports ventured very much into brick and mortar with local venues, performance centers and everything. Corona killed that. I mean, that's not just a kill, that's a headshot. Because obviously people can't go together. And actually this pains me because a lot of people started to get this feeling that esports is not just something that you experience when you go home and you close the door behind you and turn on your PC. Now all of a sudden you had esports in the London Metro or somewhere next door, right? As a shop, as a literally an outlet where you can enjoy that with other people. And obviously Corona, much like any other entertainment business, may it be a cinema or a casino, it completely shut down. The only difference is in esports, we're young. We don't have $1 billion capital somewhere, saved from the previous years, like casinos have, for example. And bankruptcy and insolvency is something a lot more prevalent. I do believe Vegas, for example, will easily survive because everybody knows it's coming back. However, some downtown internet gaming shop in, who knows, Cincinnati doesn't have that luxury. So I don't know, I can't put a percentage on it, but I do believe the brick and mortar space in esports will crumble probably by 50, 60%. And then we have to see how quickly they recover. So that's the two major things I believe that will be off in my prediction, but everything else is still on track.
And Martin, I'd love to get your insights on future markets and ventures moving forward. I know that you are very accurate when pinpointing new and emerging markets and regions where you're looking to locate and where there's opportunities in the virtual sports space. So looking ahead, what kind of areas or regions are you looking at?
My next region will be the moon because I hear it's corona-free. Joking. I have a similar situation than Sebastian, to be honest. Everybody was saying, Corona, you made a lot of money. If we're honest, it's not true. Because everyone who was strong in virtual sports, he made his main money in the retail business. And you can imagine I had 55,000 jobs. And within 3 weeks, 50,000 were closed. That this has a big effect. And then we had the situation in March where the online picks up very strong in the first months. But in April, we had a lot of new clients, but we didn't grow still on traffic because you can imagine if you don't have any sports, then it's not that everybody is playing esports and virtual sports. There are a lot of people don't even go on the website because they don't get what they expected. So this was also a situation. Looking what we want to do, for me, US was actually a planned release. We're just about to get licensed in New Jersey with our first client, pushing a lot for Pennsylvania. We have 3 huge projects in North America, mainly on retail business. So we have no idea what's going on. So it's a market for us. We have the situation in Africa where especially thanks to the business, like countries like Nigeria, they couldn't afford it to shut down everything. They tried it for a week. But if you have a lot of people who live for $1 a day, which they make on the street, you cannot close them home. So we had this business still there. The retail in Italy starts slowly to come back. We lost a lot of money in Italy, so we lost for sure. Virgin markets, as I told you, Spain for us, a very important market. I hope we don't get a second wave. We were the first company licensed in Spain on virtual sports as a casino game, because classic virtual sports are not legal now. The US market is a big market for us, where we really focus. And there are coming more markets in Europe. Africa, we're already there. We just got a license in South Africa as one of the first virtual operators. It wasn't possible for many years. So there is a lot of things to do. But as Sebastian was saying, we don't know what's happened in the future. You know, if even if everything comes back, how it will affect us, that people maybe have less money and a second wave or maybe another pandemic situation. But now we know, even if you work hard, a small thing and maybe some politics like Mr. Trump or other guys can destroy a lot of things, you know. And we had the situation in Austria, everybody was complaining on Mr. Kurz that he shut down. In the end of the day, we didn't have a lot of coronas. Now we can discuss it was good or bad, we don't know. But for the business, I would say we will cover every loss until the end of the year, if there is not another wave. And looking forward for mainly North America. That's the target. No new games, because I don't believe it's good to compete always on games. You should make what you have, and it's good to make it better.
May I add something here, Jessica? I think what's also interesting for you. Yeah, I think what's also interesting for your viewers to understand is that brands, especially the older, the bigger ones, I mean, the older you are, the slower you get. That's true for humans as well as for companies. And old sometimes also means rich, and the richer they are, the slower they move. Now, what I'm trying to say with this is that the way, for example, people tackle esports, and you have to understand the last, let's say, 10 years or 5 years, it doesn't matter. I spend telling people, go into esports, even if it's a niche thing for you, but establish your assets, grow them, build your fandom, build your community. It's pretty much a second leg you can put your table or chair on, right? So if anything happens, everything from a bomb threat into your stadium, your club going bankrupt, the league shutting down, anything, you know, some force majeure, you still have that running for you, and you can monetize it, and you can cross over sponsors, right? So these are the speeches I've been holding a million times, and I'm actually getting quite tired of. Now, Corona came, and what happened is that I was in the I told you so position. So all of a sudden they said like, okay, my league is down, my club is down, my stadium is down, my casino is down, I need to go in esports. And I'm like, yeah, I told you so. So for example, my company focuses on bringing people really quickly into esports, especially on the technology side. We can get someone esports ready with really big and sophisticated platforms in, let's say, 2 weeks. Assuming that everything goes smooth. But still, what happens now is he is also a resistant to education. So you have to understand, in January, February, everybody knew about Corona. In March, my phone and inbox exploded of people, oh my God, Corona comes, I need to have an alternative. With many of these people, we worked on alternatives. We tried to get them into the space. And here's the funny part. They learned they need to have a second leg to stand on. But now, since some of the countries then in May, for example, took again operations in sports or had the lockdowns relieved or anything like that, they instantly stopped the conversation. Now, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so you were just taught by life, not by me. You didn't listen to me, but you had to listen to life. You were taught that your business can be swept under your feet away in an instant. And you were already talking with me about an alternative, and we were about to establish it, and at least we would have done it, and you would be ready for the next whatever, flu, pandemic, or other force majeures. But the second the lockdown came down, they said like, oh, sorry, not interested anymore. So there's still a lot of friends where I thought they learned, but now that the lockdown went away in some countries, esports was off the table again. So what I'm saying is, while Corona has for some brands a good educational effect, and they start to diversify their business, to be more resistant, crisis resistant, there's a lot of brands who literally just saw that as a quick reliever and the second the pain point stopped, they ignored it again. So I can predict you the next pandemic, the next crisis, they're going to be in the same position that 90%, 95% of their business breaks away, and they do not have anything to fight it. So that's also the sad part, which I do have to report as an anecdote. So because many people think really after Corona, everybody will be focused on more resistant business, second alternatives, and diversification. No, it's not. Many of them just threw it away.
And Martin's nodding in agreement with you there. So I'm not sure if Martin has the same experience in the virtual sports front as well.
Absolutely. Okay, the difference between Sebastian's business and my business is that Virtuals did work the last 10 years very, very successful. And if you see, for example, Golpet, one of the biggest brands in Italy, when you do more than 25% of your income in virtual sports, it's very strong. Or for example, my biggest operator in Nigeria, we talk about more than 20 million euros GGR per month. So it was already there, people know. But I agree with him. March was the most busy month in my life. Can you imagine we were signing with our sales team within 9 days, 112 new contracts, new operators, companies like 888, where I was running behind for a year, Tipico, Intervet, huge companies. We don't talk about ABC from Zillertal, big companies, big operators. But I have to agree, as soon there was a light at the end of the tunnel, everything slowed down again, because I think we have the same situation. You sign a contract and they don't have resources. They put you on a list in 2 years. At this time, everybody had resources until the moment comes where they think, okay, pandemic is gone. Deutsche Bundesliga starts and it slowed down again. And I have to agree with him. They will never learn it. And I tell them always, listen, we have so many examples that betting companies are doing 10, 15, 20, some African countries, 60% of their income on virtuals compared to real sports, even before pandemic. So I would always have it on my platform because it's always income. Doesn't matter, pandemic, no pandemic, let's hope never happen again. But I think now we will. I'm afraid there will be more coming in the future, and they should be more clever on this.
Well, Sebastian, Martin, thank you so much for shedding so much light on different aspects of the virtual and esports world. I really appreciate your insights today, and I'm sure our viewers have learned an enormous amount. So thank you both so much for your time today.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, we hope you liked this interview. Share your thoughts in the comments below with SiGMA TV.